I'm speaking with Dr. Paikiasothy Saravanamuttu, co-convenor of the Center for Monitoring Election Violence. Dr. Saravanamuttu, we have seen today the two very serious incidents. One, a murder of a party supporter in Tangalla, and another in Batticaloa, where an unknown assailant had lobbed a grenade at an SLMC supporter. It seems to be the case that the campaign is turning violent. Have there been any other incidents in this regard, and what are your thoughts on these incidents as they happen today?
No, these are two of the more serious incidents that we have recorded so far in the course of this election campaign. I mean, always the fear has been that the closer you get to polling day, the more intense and bitter the campaign gets, the greater the chance of, major incidents of violence. It is really sad and tragic that this happened. It's the first time that it's happened in the context of this election campaign, and we fear that there might be more incidents of this nature until and unless the authorities, and particularly in this respect, political parties, discipline their supporters and send the signal out to them that this kind of violence, this kind of, violation of human rights and desecration of democratic norms is not to be tolerated. So our fear is that these kinds of incidents may well be on the increase in the next 2 weeks, but we hope that even at this later stage in the election campaign, those who can do something to stop it, to deter it, will go ahead and do so.
As one of the accredited election violation monitoring agencies, CMEV has monitored a number of elections and is no stranger to the violent nature of these campaigns. Has there ever been an instance where the Elections Commissioner or indeed the police have investigated violations of this nature and brought the culprits to justice?
Well, there have been investigations, and we're told that investigations are ongoing, but in terms of actually bringing perpetrators to justice and using them as symbols or as examples of what would happen if one engaged in this kind of violence, we don't have any incidents of that nature. And this is why, at the end of the day, whilst the police need to definitely carry out their duty, their responsibilities, political parties also must act to ensure the integrity of the electoral process.
You did mention that it is your fear that these violations, particularly the most violent ones, will increase as we get closer to polling day. Have there any communication in this regard from the Elections Commissioner on measures he will be taking to hold political party supporters and political parties in check against violations of this nature in the future?
Well, there's no specific remedy that he is granted under election law, and he can act only according to the law, but he can constantly keep reminding and reiterating in the strongest terms to the police that they must fulfill their responsibilities for law and order, and certainly tell political parties that this is just unacceptable. We really need to look at it in terms of whether there are lacunae in the law with regard to this, but there should not need to be a specific legal requirement in order for political parties to ensure a non-violent election.
More broadly speaking, and finally, Dr. Saravanamuttu, in terms of the final result coming out from these elections, or indeed any other election, what does the violence in the lead up to these elections portend? I mean, does it undermine the democratic credentials of either the government or the individual who is elected, and what does it say of Sri Lanka as a democracy?
Most certainly. I mean, if you have a situation in which the allegations with regard to the incidents of violence fall disproportionately on the shoulders of one particular political party or formation, then that does give an indication of their political modus operandi. And in that respect, yes, it does rob them of a certain amount of credibility and legitimacy. Having said that, though, in terms of a final result, I think the violence, the malpractice that any side would want to engage in cannot, at the end of the day, I think, resist a major swing in favor of one side or the other. Now, at the end of the day, nevertheless, any violence is a blot, it's a blur, it mars the integrity of the electoral process, and I think we need to ensure that this is not repeated again and again in the context of elections in Sri Lanka.
Thanks very much.